Hey guys, so welcome to a new video. Um, this video is going to be a two-part guide where it's going over Raksha as a boss, right? Learning that boss and how to fight Raksha. But it's also going to be kind of like a guide into the melee style. The reason for that is I have found that melee at Raksha is very straightforward. It's very fun, in my opinion. It's a really good style to use. I enjoy it. But also, Raksha is a very good boss to learn the melee style at. It involves a little bit of movement, some DPS checks that you can opt to go for or ignore in the forms of the pools, and just kind of a lot going on that it's enough to make it a little challenging and rewarding, but there's profit to be made. It's a very multifaceted boss, in my opinion. So I think this is a really great way to introduce learning the boss as well as learning the style. So with that said, you can see my inventory and gear. It's a little chaotic right now. I'm going to be going over a whole bunch of variations, different gear, different price points. So no matter what your budget is, you can kind of cater your build and your equipment to what you have access to at the time. And as you move forward, you increase your budget, you can kind of improve your gear layout, and the kills will get faster, easier, and it kind of compounds. So we are going to start with the introduction of my revolution and action bars and my relics. Those are kind of your foundation. So we're going to open with our relic powers. So I'm using Conservation of Energy, Death Ward, and Fury of the Small. This is my go-to for pretty much anything. I don't really ever change this ever. There is arguments to be made about heightened senses for ranged, but as a very solid staple, these three are perfect for everything moving forward PvM. There is the Berserker's Fury, but that requires you to have lower health, and if you're learning something, you probably aren't going to be very comfortable running low health. So the trade-off, I'd say Death Ward is much safer, and as you get more comfortable, you can change that around. Conservation of Energy is just amazing for every style. Getting 10% adrenaline on ultimates when you're talking melee with Berserk and Meteor Strike and your Overpower, Magic, Sunshine, Tsunami, all Omni Power, Ranged, all the styles. It's incredible. And the cool part is the fact that it's archaeology. You can AFK it, and along the way, you can make plenty of money to fund the minimum costs of this setup by either contributing, selling pronotes, disassembling, selling artifacts. You can make the money needed for the minimum setup of this, so it's really a good thing to do. Then secondly is our action bars. So you can do this on full Revolution plus. That is an option. The PvMe, there's a lot of sources, there's a lot of YouTube videos that go over how to, Revo Raksha, and that's great, that's fine. But if you're looking to learn, a really good and strong introduction point is you use Revolution on your basic abilities, and then you are going to manually cast your defensives, your ultimates, your thresholds, everything like that. That's a really good kind of tipping point of transitioning out of Revo plus, and it allows you to do more damage because you have more control over what's going on. And the way I have my action bar set up is on the action bar binding. So I have all of my action bars named because it just makes my brain work better, of my utilities, defensives, all that. But then I have dual wield and a two-handed for the for everything, just to kind of help me remember what I'm doing, so if I'm changing bars around. But on top of that, it also helps for when you go into your action bar binding, you can then make sure everything lines up nice. So what I have is for melee any style, it's changing my additional action bar, and that's just to melee for every single style. I have a designated bar that's just the arbitrary things that, regardless of if you're dual wield or two-hand, you need them. So that could be your weapon switches, overpower, because in situations you might want to dual wield, or your two-hand for damage. Chaos roar, berserk, doesn't matter what style, what weapons I'm using, I need those. My barge and escape, your prayers, some bleeds, because for melee specific, sometimes you might want to bleed with a scourge, sometimes you might want to bleed with your spear, and that's for every style. Is then I have a bar that is set up for the dual wield, and then if you change to two-hand, it alters it to the two-hand specific abilities of like meteor strike, pulverize, things like that. So it's not something that you have to do, but it's a great thing, is setting up your bars in a way that makes it intuitive for you, feel good, and that muscle memory will help you in the long run. So it's worth starting early, and then there. With that out of the way, let's start kind of breaking into the gear. So we're going to get into the minimum, right? What is required at a baseline to really do anything. And barring that, I would say this is kind of our baseline minimum, with a few alterations depending on your budget. So Jaws of the Abyss is pretty incredible. It's tier 85. The passive is fantastic. As you do bleeds, especially with Scourge, you're getting more adrenaline. Really, really strong. Best part, it's only like 250k. It's very cheap. So even end game best in slot, you're still gonna have this in your inventory, even if you're bouncing back and forth between the hood and it. Perfect. Arcade, you do not need the Zuck cape. It is incredibly strong. I highly recommend it. I have a video on how to do Zuck with Necromancy. Necromancy has made it so accessible, and it's really, really incredible. It makes your overpower cost less adrenaline, do more damage. It's like, I cannot stress enough how good it is to go for. However, if you do not have it, a really good alternative that you'll see I have inside my max cape is a strength cape. And that is because the strength cape makes your bleeds, it helps with your bleeds. So in a world where we are focusing on the Scourge, that is going to be your next best option. Immediately following that, we have our Blood Amulet. This is a hybrid amulet. It's really, really good, and it provides you passive healing. It's not very expensive. It's like 1.5 mil-ish as of right now. So it's, when you're bridging the gap of 1.5 mil to 250 mil for an EOF, it's kind of a no-brainer, right? Because if you have a tight budget, obviously go with the Blood Amulet. Our Scourge. The Scourge is kind of the bread and butter right now of me, because the passive, the parasite stacks, that bleed stacks up to 50 times. It's going to help carry your damage unbelievably. And then you pair that with things like Dismember, Tendrils, and Slaughter, where if you use bleeds with the Scourge, those bleeds help build stacks, so you'll get to the 50 stacks much quicker. It's the bleeds will help maintain your stacks. So for Raksha specifically, if you use Dismember right before you go and do the pools, Dismember will maintain your parasite stacks so you don't lose them while you're dealing with the pools. But the Scourge is our bread and butter. Paired with that then is our Gloves of Passage. And these are also relatively instrumental, mostly because of their change to the ability Havoc or Smash if you're using two-hand. And you use Havoc, and then immediately after you're going to use one of your bleeds, be it Dismember, Tendrils, or Slaughter, and it's going to make that do more damage. And on top of that, it makes your bleeds do more damage, and seeing as how your opponent is always being bled because of Forge, it's just a huge boost in your damage. Laceration boots, incredibly cheap and just a great baseline. You do need them for Bladed Dive with a two-hand, so they are required, but later on as you get more comfortable, you're going to be using them as a switch as opposed to just camping them the whole time. I have Bandos on right now because that is what I would say your minimum is as far as gear to start doing things, but then there's multiple options. You can jump up to your Anima of Zeros, from there your Masterwork, then at that point you would kind of choose between Trim Masterwork or Vestments. Trim Masterwork is great if you find yourself really struggling for survival because it takes the damage that you take and it turns it into a bleed, so it turns into damage over time, so you don't take it all in one shot. It allows you to heal past it. The Vestments is the exact opposite. It's, you take more damage, the armor rating is much lower, but the trade-off is the damage you deal is incredible. So you get to, you can kind of pick and choose down the line where you're at. Then lastly, your pocket slot. You have a few options. Obviously, there's multiple different pocket slot options, but for just the starting and getting into on a budget sense, we have our Scrimshaw of Vampirism, which is going to drastically help you survive because it's going to heal you, or I would say your Scripture of Amasket. It's cheap, it's very strong, it's just fantastic to have. Down the line, if you want to branch out and start looking at crit builds and using Grim, full, there's plenty of options, but start off with one of those, depending on your situation on survivability. And that's kind of the whole inventory. We have the Nexus just for Bone Shield. It doesn't have to be Zem's Nexus, it can be the other one. There's not a ton of defensives you'll be needing in this fight, so it's just there for the sake of being there. Rings, you can pick any of the Dwarven rings, right? The Luck of the Dwarves or the Ring of Death. Most people have one or the other. It's just a pretty standard thing that people tend to lean towards getting earlier on. So if you have either or, that's fine, use it. If you don't have any ring and you're trying to figure out what to get, I would say, depending on your budget, Asylum Surgeon Ring is free. It is quest locked, and I know that is a miserable quest for 90% of us, but it is free, it is very strong. If you are not permanently sticking to melee, then Ring of Death or Luck of the Dwarves. The Ring of Death has better stats. It is better as far as dealing damage. It obviously doesn't provide the luck, but it is only 1%. It's not huge. So I would personally lean towards your Ring of Death. However, if you are enjoying melee and you're sticking with it, at a very similar price point, actually it's much cheaper, I'm pretty sure it's like 30 mil, 35 mil, as opposed to the 70-ish mil for a Dwarven ring, is our Champion's Ring, and that gives better stats, better prayer. However, and again, grants some crit against bleeding targets, and again, paired with Scourge, that's huge, but it is melee specific. So, comparable to that 70 mil for Luck of the Dwarves or Ring of Death, the alternative would be a Reaver's Ring, and this is hybrid, so it works for all of your styles. Now, it is around 70 mil as of right now, which is same as these, kind of pricey, but this ring can be your one-stop shop for every single style moving forward. So if you divide that by, 3 or 4, depending on if you are an Equilibrium user for Necro or not, it kind of cuts that price per style down drastically. So those are kind of your ring options. Then moving forward necklace, like I was saying, you have your EOF or your blood amulet. Those are really the two I would choose from, depending on your price point. EOF opens a whole slew of options that we will get into later. The gear, again, I went over. And then finally, weapons. There is the Dark Ice Shard. That is something you can add as a switch if you want the weapon spec to be added as part of your rotation. You do not have to have it. You can just camp these and be happy with it. That is totally fine. And the last choices you have are for your two-hand. You have either your Masuda Spear, which I have right here. It works perfectly fine for clearing pools. It works perfectly fine for two-hand as a switch if you need to Quake for debuff, Meteor Strike, Pulverize, anything like that. However, some better options that are obviously more pricey, your Dragon Rider Lance around 30 mil, your Scythe, which is like 350 mil, and as of right now, we do have a boss release, a Masket, in the somewhat near future that is supposed to be doing a new halberd. So there is always that, but it's going to be new. I'm sure it's going to be through the roof expensive. So just, I guess it gets an honorable mention. And then the only other 3 additional things you could add, again, are way down the line, and you probably won't need this video at that point, is your EZK, your Masterwork Spear of Annihilation, and your ZGS. ZGS gives you kind of like a mini Zerk. Your Spear is your bleed booster, and your EZK has a pretty incredible bleed spec. However, that is also a weapon that, as of right now, they, I think, are changing or adding a passive, so that one is on the fence. So possibly yes, possibly no. Take that with a grain of salt as per what it does when you're watching this video. The last few things before we kind of get into it, sorry that this is a little bit long, but I'm trying to make it as comprehensive as possible. Your overload, obviously, just whatever the best is that you have access to. Excalibur and Shard, just for prayer and healing. They aren't required. I just like them. They make my life easier. Rune pouches. You do not need them if you don't plan on using Disruption Shield or you don't have it. Same with Vengeance. And you don't need them if you aren't using a Hellhound with Scrolls or a Reaver, because then you won't need Prism. So these you add depending on if you plan on healing a Hound with Prism or with Scrolls, or if you plan on casting some of these spells here. But if you're using a Ripper and you're not using Disruption, you do not need them. You can just kind of let the Ripper go to town. Same with a Calg, totally fine. Our armor spikes, they just help with the bleed. They can sometimes proc, do a little damage. They add a parasite stack. You do not have to have them equipped. You can just have them in your inventory and they still work. So keep that in mind. You don't actually have to have them on and worn in a slot. We have portents. Those are just fantastic to have in your preset or when you're learning. They do not cost adrenaline. They'll automatically heal you when you get under half health. They're just kind of a helpful little buffer. And then brews and blubbers. So not a lot of people know about tick eating. Might not. If you bind your eat food action under defensives and you bind physically drag your food over, I can hit Alt and I can hit 2 and 3 at the same exact time, and I will both take a sip and eat a bite of blues. It just gives more healing, and this is a wonderful alternative to solids. Solids do heal more, however, they consume adrenaline, and especially for melee, which is a notoriously adrenaline-starved style, you want every percentage you can get. If you are struggling and you need the big healing, honestly, you can bring some solids, but try your best to eat them outside of your berserk. I know that seems silly considering you're taking more damage during your berserk, but you need all the adrenaline you can get. I do have a couple tips that might help you as far as a damage taken during your berserk that help. So we'll talk about those a little later. Then Vuln bombs, essential for everything. Expensive spices, just to make these heal a little bit more. And you're familiar, depending on how you're doing as far as sustain or damage, you can pick your Hound, your Reaver, Ripper, whatever works for you. So that's kind of my whole list of everything on everything. We'll do a couple kills with a couple different gear setups just to show you some examples, go over kind of in my head what abilities I'm using when, priority wise. I'll try to both include and exclude some of the greater abilities like Barge, Fury, Flurry, things like that, just so if you do or don't have them, you kind of see what we're doing. And yeah, hopefully you get something out of this. Okay, so for our first kill, our kind of very basic, this is our lowest tier gear. I'm using the Luck of the Dwarves, the Scrimshaw of Vampirism. I'm using a Bunyip and a Penance Aura. So that's just to kind of prove that this is the baseline, right? Like my aura is not helping at all. My familiar really isn't helping at all. Of the two rings, this one has lower stats. So this really boils down to the rotations that we use, which are not set in stone. And at this level, at this point with gear, I don't really expect any set rotations. You're kind of aiming to use strong abilities, right? And just survive and deal with mechanics as they come in a smart way. So before we get started, just keep in mind that for Raksha, in the back of your head, it's always 4 attacks and then a mechanic. So when you start this boss, you're gonna, possibly be losing count, missing count, forgetting what's next, what's happening. That's totally fine, but just keep in mind that it's 4 and then a mechanic. So let's get this kill started. You'll see I have the portents, I have a little bit of food. So right off the bat, here's how to kind of help with your Berserk and taking a lot of damage. So you see, I used Reflect and then I used Berserk. Reason being is before I actually have an active target, defensives like Reflect and Devotion are free. And obviously not like Barricade and more stuff like that, but Reflect and Devotion are free. So depending on if you plan on camping Soul Split or if you plan on prayer flicking, if you use Reflect or Devotion, or you do anything and then use Berserk, it gives you the first 10 seconds of your Berserk where you're taking either a lot less damage or no damage. I opt for Reflect and camping Soul Split in this particular instance because I know my gear is a little bit lower tier, so that actually helps kind of benefit me and increases my damage output as opposed to just taking more damage. So just keep that in mind. It's just a helpful way to help with the damage you take with Berserk as you're learning. We're gonna Vuln, and right off the bat, just throw your bleeds, use Havoc, and then as quickly as you can, just throw your first threshold. We're waiting now for the tail swipe, and you'll see on my bar, that's why I have Escape and Barge right next to each other. It doesn't matter if you have Greater Barge or not. We're not using the greater effect. We're simply using it to dodge and get back in. So you'll see my Berserk is already almost out. That's totally fine. The goal is pretty much to just get the initial dismember off, right? And then get a threshold and get the overpower. At this point now, I'm just stacking parasite stacks. You see I got stunned there. If you know that it's coming, if you're counting, you can use Anticipate. If you don't, if you get stunned, just use Freedom and then surge away as soon as that bomb comes. It's pretty straightforward. And at this point now, we're just using our strong abilities, right? If you have greater flurry, use that to decrease your Zerk cooldown. If you have greater fury, you can use that as much as you can before any non-bleed abilities for crit chance. And again, we're just kind of rolling through, stacking our bleeds. So this first rockfall, you can see I chose to use debilitate. If you bring a power burst of vitality, you can also use that. It's a great option. It costs 0 adren. It's inventory space. And yeah, so on my bar, I kind of have my thresholds prioritized, where I like to do assault, then flurry, then destroy. Flurry is mainly I care about. I have it directly over my berserk, just so I can kind of see the berserk timer when I go look at it to see if I need it or not. And you see, I just rolled through another berserk, did as much damage as I could, and now once we hit this 400,000, you'll see a really good thing to do is before you go to your pools, right? Throw a bleed on Raksha. That bleed will continue ticking as you are killing these pools, and it'll help maintain your parasite stacks while you're not actively attacking Raksha. Then you're gonna head back on, swap to your gear, throw another bleed, you got your stacks, and now the shadow manifestation that's coming over, use your flurry. If greater or not, it doesn't matter. It hits an AoE around you and it'll just kill them. If it doesn't do enough damage, you saw there, I swapped to my 2-hand because if you need to, you can use either Hurricane or Quake just to nuke them down. And so at this point, you'll see my Berserk is off cooldown, but I'm opting not to use it because I want to use it on the next phase right away, and I'm not going to be assuming that you have greater flurry to get that cooldown back quick enough. So we're just kind of stalling out here. We're just using our strong hitting stuff and getting Raksha down to 200,000. Again, keep in mind that there's going to be tail swipes coming, things like that. See, I swap my 2-hand here just to kill the shadow manifestation, just do some abilities. And the other thing you can do here is I like to, if I can, do a channeled ability right before the phase point, only because it allows you to, as you see here, throw bleeds right before you phase. Those bleeds will continue ticking even though Raksha's immune, and will actually help you maintain your parasite stacks through this transition. You can lose them, it happens a lot. It's not a big deal if you do, but if you do, just remember, prioritize the bleeds. That's this whole thing, is just prioritize bleeds. So now that we're into P4, you'll see, well, again, with my escape and barge being right next to each other, it's gone from now every 2 attacks, or every 4 attacks, to every 2 attacks. I'm sorry. And after you get 2 tail swipes, you get the shield. Your bleeds should be plenty to pop it. And now we're doing our berserk right after. And the reason is because you saw there was a little roll there before I got any attacks. And again, we're just going escape out, barge in, do your abilities. A really cool option is if you find you're panicking, you don't want to be running in and out and in and out, you can always use anticipate and debilitate or reflect or resonance to nullify the stun and the damage taken. If that is easier for you, you know that's always a viable option. And now after our berserk, we're just back to prioritize strong abilities, in and out every 2 attacks, and just slow and steady. The bleeds will do all the damage. As you can see, I haven't actually touched my food at all. The portents have kept me alive this whole time, even through the Zerks. If you want to collect the shadow anima and run around and do that, you're free to do that. You certainly don't have to, but it does increase your damage. It's just another thing that you can add to your way of improving. But beyond that, like I said, just havoc and bleeds is really going to be your bread and butter. And if you have your greater fury, use that as much as you can. And punish at this point is also really strong. Once your opponent's under 50% health, it does a lot more damage. And that's our bare bones very first kill, right? That one was about a 6-minute kill, so nothing impressive, right? That's only 10 kills an hour. But for getting started, that it's solid kill. It leaves tons of room to grow, tons of room to improve. And our next kill, we're gonna change and start upping the budget, upping the kill time, making it a little bit better. I'm gonna show a couple example kills of just small changes throughout the kills that make it faster, make it better, and hopefully you can take something out. So on this kill here, as you can see, I've only made 2 changes. Well, I should say I've made 3 changes. 2 to the gear, 1 to the inventory. So to change the inventory, as you can see right there, I brought a super adrenaline potion, so I can right off the bat get my, some stronger abilities, really kind of help push this initial P1 damage. And beyond that, I am now using the Ring of Death as opposed to the Luck of the Dwarves, and the Scripture of the Masket as opposed to the Vamp Script. Now, I won't be healing as much, but it will be helping my damage output, and that's just, really, really nice. So as you can see, with just those few changes on the previous kill, the HP I think was substantially higher. This time we were at like 630k, so we were 40k off from skipping this stun. So right there you can tell that there was an immediate improvement in our damage. So, but the only downside, as you can see, I've already used 3 of the Portents of Restoration. So if you aren't actively flicking, you are taking, not taking more damage, but you're not healing as much because you don't have your Vamp Script. Beyond that, the kill is roughly the same, but you'll see at the end the kill time is definitely quicker. Just these changes alone shaves about a minute off the kill, and it goes from a 6-minute kill to a 5-minute kill. So I'm gonna just let this kill ride. Feel free to watch it, fast forward it, skip it, move on to the next one. This is this kill. So on this kill, it's going to be very, very similar to the previous kill. However, again, we made one more change, and that is we added an essence of finality. And inside that essence of finality is a dragon longsword. For melee, really I would say the three primary EOFs, excluding the easy K, is you have your dragon longsword, you have your dragon dagger, and you have your dragon claws. If you aren't running crit, where you're doing meteor strike and you have grim and reaver's ring and Calgarian and all these crit buffs, I would really say stay away from dragon claws, just because it is strong, right? It is a very strong ability, but it's 50% adrenaline, and if you don't crit at all and don't get any adrenaline refund from the claws, you really just hurt your whole rotation because you kind of just ran out of adrenaline after one ability. So Dragon Longsword and Dragon Dagger, I'd highly suggest. They're also strong, not as strong. They only cost 25% adrenaline. And you can see here, we did not get that second tail swipe. We're 51 seconds in and phasing, right? So this was a much quicker first phase, and that's because of the Dragon Longsword spec. Don't need to build up to 50% adrenaline to use it, right? It only costs 25%. So either building into the start of your rotation, you can add it, or at the very end where you don't have enough adrenaline for a threshold, but you know still have 1 or 2 seconds left on your Zerg timer. Really strong to add. And the really cool part about Dragon Longsword is it actually has an enhanced hit cap. So on top of the fact that our hit cap is now up to 30,000, the Dragon Longsword, I believe, is somewhere around 36,000, right? So if you pair your Dragon Longsword with either Fury for the potential for crit, or Greater Fury for the guaranteed crit, or Chaos Roar, it's going to be a very massive hit for you. So that alone is really just kind of an extra threshold that you can add to your entire rotation, both in and out of Zerg. It's obviously not going to be nearly as useful to you in or outside of your Zerg, but still, you know, it's a great ability. Unlike your 3 main channels of Assault, Destroy, and Flurry, you don't have to stand still for 5 seconds for it, which is also very helpful. So it's just something really good to add. It has no cooldown. Just kind of weave it in depending on where you're at. That, and like I said, if you prefer the Dragon Dagger, it's instead of one massive hit like the Dragon Longsword, it's 2 smaller hits. So if you're leaning more towards trying to get some crit and such, then by all means go for the dagger as opposed to the longsword. And as you saw right there, I was just trying to showcase the fact that if you have Greater Barge, and also I ate a tail swipe, but it didn't kill me, you know, if mistakes happen. So if you eat a tail swipe, it's not the end of the world, it's totally fine. Just eat some food, bring it back, and you're good. But if you want to go back and check, there at the end of the bombardment section after pools, you're off of Raksha long enough that if you happen to have Greater Barge, it's already inherently charged itself, so you can always barge back in, bleed one of your channeled abilities. It's just another way to, you know, add some damage to your repertoire. So just kind of wanted to show that that's an option here. And now, as you can see, on this last phase, we're doing our Berserk. We threw in, you know, our Overpower, a Punish, a Dragon Longsword spec, and it's just much faster, much cleaner. This one's, I think this one was like a 4 minute and 30 second kill. So just by adding that one addition to our ability pool, we cut another 30 seconds off. So as you can see, with every kill, you make just slight changes along the way, and every little change just shaves some time off and shaves some time off and makes the kill smoother and easier and better. So I think after this one, I have two more. One is kind of like the, I would say, start of your end game with melee, right? Where I'll be using just full vestments. It's like a sub 4. It's a pretty decent kill. And then the last one I'll show is just kind of showcasing everything of everything. It's on my other old main account where I had 100% best in slot of everything, dragon claws, all of it, and that's just kind of showcasing and it's by far the best kill, right? And it's before necromancy even came out, but it's just kind of showcasing just how ridiculous melee can be as far as burst and damage, and I'm not anything to boast about, and it's still a pretty fun kill, a pretty good kill, so hopefully you get some enjoyment out of it. So this kill, and again, I know this is a much longer video, there's a whole bunch of just kills back to back. You do not have to watch all or any of them, there will be timestamps, but as you can see, this kill I'm doing full vestments, and I'll be swapping to the helm and the boots at some point, and then from then on camping them, right? It's just for this initial, so you have extra adrenaline, so your berserk timer's a little longer. It just kind of helps, and then you swap off of it. And again, it just whittles down, and I also added the champion's ring instead of dwarven rings. Beyond that, like I said, there's still room to grow with your auras, your familiars, your booked, your perked. So I'm just going to let this whole kill ride. The big difference you'll see though is I do have mobile on this perk, on this gear set, which for P4 especially helps a lot because it makes it a lot more reliable that you can just kind of escape and barge after every single tail swipe, right? Because it cuts those cooldowns in half. So it's definitely a helpful perk to get no matter what your gear set is, even with the Bando stuff, because it's augmentable. It's definitely worthwhile getting because it just makes your life a little bit easier. It brings those cooldowns down. So hopefully you enjoy. It'll just be music from this point on. And this kill and the kill following. And thank you for watching, and I hope this helps.